and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 177, and today's date is October 1st, 2013. And the title of this episode is Shut It Down. Shut it all down so the people feel it. And what the government likes to do is they like to shut down the areas where the people can feel the shutdown. And they're doing this with websites, they're doing it with national monuments, they're doing it with museums, and they want the people to really feel what it's like to have the government shut down. Just like they did with the sequester, where they didn't have fireworks on the army bases, and they're really showing and giving it to the people to let them know. But if you notice, they never shut down or remove their salaries. Obamacare is going in full steam ahead with a glitchy software package, and it's just funny how all of these things are always to show the American people what the shutdown feels like. How about instead of shutting down the National Monument and shutting down websites, they shut down the aid to Israel, the aid to Egypt, the aid to Saudi Arabia, because that's billions of dollars. You know how much we can save if we do that? But they never seem to do that. But we'll get into that in a little bit with the report. Here is an update for the Banque Nationale of Panama, where they had a software upgrade, and it started on Friday, and it was supposed to go to today. And I went onto their website, and what they've said on there is Phase 2 is complete. The entire banking system is on the new software, and they reopened all the ATMs and all the banks, and everything seems to be back to normal. And that is the update for the banking holiday over the weekend and a couple days into the week here. Now, in India, temples are fighting back against the government because they want a list of what gold they have in the temples, because what they're going to do in the end is take the gold. And it appears some of the temples are now drawing a line in the sand, and they are refusing to provide details about their holdings in India. And the central bank has sent letters to some of the country's richest temples asking for details for their gold. And this goes on to say the gold stored in temples was contributed by devotees of over thousands of years, and we will not allow anyone to usurp it. And they will not let anyone allowed to take it, look at it, detail it, or anything. And it's always the same thing with the central banks. They always go after the natural resources. They go after the natural resources of every single country, and the things they like are oil, natural gas, gold, uranium, diamonds, anything that's physical, and it is not paper and ink. And this is what they always go after. Now, we saw that in the news that the Eurozone unemployment rate went from 12.1% to 12%, and they're saying that they're on their way to a recovery. I don't know how this could be a recovery because of a 0.1 percentage point, but we can see other things that are happening. Cyprus, their unemployment went up. Greece, their unemployment went up. Germany's unemployment is inching up also. Germany's jobless rate has unexpectedly risen by 25,000 people in September, which was completely caught them off guard, and it was a surprise to the forecasters. The unemployment rate edged up to 6.9% in September from 6.8%. So we can see that in certain areas of the Eurozone, there are countries that are not doing well, and their unemployment continually goes up. And I know they're trying to paint this picture that everything is recovering, everything is getting better, and they are started with manipulating numbers, just like the U.S. manipulates their numbers, just to build on that everything is getting better. But when we see things like this, we realize that things are not getting better. Even here in the U.S., again, retail sales, house sales, car sales, all declining. Not every single company, but a lot of them are starting to feel it now. And you have to remember, just about, what was it, like a month and a half ago, they allowed these subprime borrowers to go ahead and borrow to purchase automobiles. And these are people with bad credit. And Toyota now is saying that their September sales have fell around 4.3% compared to last year. GM, their vehicle sales collapsed 11%. And we are seeing this more and more now. We had it from Volkswagen. We had it from Audi. We had it from other car manufacturers. And we're seeing that they're having a very tough time, even when they open it up to the subprime borrowers. Because we have to remember, and we have to use common sense, that if unemployment, and I'm not talking about the manipulated numbers that they've changed since 1994, where they don't count the people who've fallen off, who just can't find work anymore, and they don't count them, and they count underemployed people who used to have an 80,000 job, a 70,000 job, who are working now part-time in a warehouse to make ends meet, and they count it as a full-time job. I'm not counting those people. So if we look at this and we use the calculation prior to 1994, we're seeing that the unemployment rate is approaching 24%. And this is quite high. And from this number, we can see why housing sales, mortgage applications are plunging. Because again, if the Fed is purchasing $40 to $45 billion a month of toxic real estate, the people that own these houses no longer have the credit or the cash to buy another. And most of the time, they do not have the ability to buy an automobile. And we are definitely seeing this, and especially all those new college graduates who are coming out of school. That unemployment figure, according to the government, is around 16%, but it's more like 40 to 50%, where these kids cannot find work in their field. They are taking other jobs that have nothing to do with their field, or they're working part-time. And most of the college graduates, and at least the ones I know, are still living at home because they cannot find the work that they really are looking for, so they can go off, rent an apartment, buy their first car, and this is where we're having the problem. And if this trend continues, it will just get worse. The housing sector will get worse, the automobile sector will get worse, the retail area will get worse, because they will not have the money to keep the economy going. And like I've said in my other reports, we've always seen major corporations laying off thousands upon thousands of people. And today, Merck is cutting another, 8,500 more jobs. And the drug maker Merck said Tuesday that it plans to cut the 8,500 jobs as part of a plan to reduce its annual cost by $2.5 billion by the end of 2015. And we are definitely seeing this happen across the country. I mean, we had Citibank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America laying off tons of people. We've had Toshiba, we've had Siemens, IBM. Meredith Whitney is telling us that come this late fall, early winter, Wall Street is going to be laying off hundreds of thousands of people to reduce their costs, because they understand that something is about to happen, and they're trying to get rid of all of these employees to build up their cash reserves. We see banks doing this. Bank of America is selling a lot of its branches because they need the cash, and we are seeing this happen all over the place. And because of the unemployment being so high for the youth coming out of college, it fits right into that the student loan default is hitting about $146 billion. It's the highest default rate level since 1995, and it's continually going up. And why is this? Well, we have to use common sense again. If these college graduates are graduating and they cannot find the job in their field, and they have to find a different job or a part-time job like in McDonald's, they cannot pay their student loans. And what happens is they eventually start to default on these loans. And with unemployment for youth so high, we can see why this is happening. And what this is saying is that this um, this student loan crisis is going to be the next subprime crisis. Now, we do understand that the U.S. government is in a partial government shutdown right now. It's about 5 or 6% of the government, and they're shutting down the museums, the parks, the national monuments. They're shutting down like the USDA website, which I don't understand anyhow, because why do they have to shut that down? I mean, the systems are running. It's probably paid for to the end of the month, and it's just running. There's no reason really to shut that down. Even the hosting that I'm using, you pay a month ahead. So whatever they're doing, I'm sure they didn't shut the whole entire building off. What did they do? They just threw the switch for the website. That doesn't really mean anything. They're closing the national monuments, which is just most of them are just stone with writing on them, and there's no reason to shut those down. And they're shutting the museums down, which people, I don't understand why they can't just go in there anyhow, because no one really helps you in there, and why people just can't look around, because it does belong to the people, not to the U.S. government. But we're seeing this all over the place. And this shutdown is not the first. This happened 18 other times, and the longest one went during Bill Clinton, which was 21 days. And I don't think this time we can go that long, because the government actually runs out of money on the 17th after they exhaust all the pension funds to pay for the government. And but they have until now, until the 17th, to make a deal, and I do believe they will make a deal. And if they don't make a deal after 17th, we can see very serious things happen. And SP, Standard & Poor's, is already out there threatening to cut the U.S. debt to junk. And they're saying, if Congress fails to pass something that raises the debt ceiling, they will have to put the U.S. to selective default, which is between CCC and B, and that's pretty much junk. And because of this, I don't understand. At this point, the government should say, you know what? We don't need the Federal Reserve anymore. We don't need to raise the debt ceiling, because under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5, the government has the right to coin its own money. And what they should do is say, guess what? I mean, they issue Treasury bonds. So what's the difference between issuing a Treasury bond and a dollar, or creating a currency? And this way they don't have to borrow this money. They don't have to repay it with interest, and we can get off the Federal Reserve. I believe this is the perfect opportunity for the government to say, you know what, to the Fed? We're not doing this anymore. We are printing our own money, just like John F. Kennedy was about to do before he was assassinated, just the way President Lincoln was doing until he was assassinated and we were taking off the greenbacks and the Federal Reserve issued their own money. It's the same thing. So they do have the ability to say, we're done here, let's coin our own money. Now, I mean, I just mentioned that the memorials are being shut down, and what has happened was the World War II memorial was shut down, but vets said, you know what, we're going to break through the barricade, and we're going to the National World War II Memorial, and they were soon joined by several members of Congress as they visited one of the sites closed by the government shutdown, and they are allowed to do this. It's just stones. It's a memorial. There's no reason why they needed to close those down. The only reason the government does this is to stick it to the people and to make them see the actual shutdown that's occurring right now. Now, during this shutdown, October 1st, Obamacare went live. And I reported that Obamacare, their software, had tons of glitches. It is really not ready to go live, but the system went live, and it was like 24 of the states were posting error messages. They were missing apply buttons. They were getting runtime errors. They were getting all these different types of errors. People couldn't enroll. People were tweeting about it. And the whole entire thing is just a huge mess. But again, because of the shutdown, this was not affected, and all the money to push this forward is still intact, except the entire system is really not ready to go live. And there is proof of it that is just a complete disaster. Okay. Now, President Obama was out there saying that the White House will continue to give military aid to countries with child soldiers. And it's funny, the government is shut down, but he's out there saying that he's going to give aid. He's going to give money. Meanwhile, they're shutting down websites for no reason. They're shutting down national monuments. They're shutting down museums. But we're still giving aid to now countries with child soldiers. Now, what are those countries, and why all of a sudden does he want to give money to these type of countries, like Yemen and Burma, Central African Republic, Sudan, and Rwanda? Why does the president want to do this? Well, let's take a look. Sudan has a huge amount of petroleum. The country has also huge deposits of chromium ore, copper, iron, and silver. Rwanda has a huge amount of gold and sapphires and a lot of different metals that are used for electronic and communication devices such as mobile phones. The Central African Republic, this country has rich but largely unexploited natural resources in the form of diamonds, gold, uranium, and minerals, and there are huge amounts of petroleum deposits along the country's northern border with Chad. And we can see all of a sudden now that we are giving aid and helping these countries, because why? The central bankers want control of all of this because they believe this will help the U.S. dollar and prop it up, because they understand if they do not do this and do not do this by force, the U.S. dollar is completely done and it will implode. So now they are doing everything and anything to do this. And when President Obama comes out there and he discusses about these mass shooting and our children in Sandy Hook, what he's doing right now, and by waiving this law and letting all these countries get aid, even though they're using child soldiers, the president is telling the military allies that ending the use of child soldiers is not that important anymore. And we can see where he is headed with all of this. Now, we see that the U.S. is starting to ramp up the propaganda again with North Korea, saying that South Korea's military needs to improve its missiles defenses and cyber capabilities to better defend against the North, because what they're seeing from satellite images that the North is firing up their nuclear reactor plant again, and the North has detonated a remote underground site, which is a step towards the North goal of building a bomb small enough to fit on a long-range missile capable of striking the U.S. now. And they are completely building on this propaganda and putting fear and letting the American people know that North Korea is a huge threat, and any minute they can bomb us with a nuclear weapon. And they've done this in the past when North Korea was signing an agreement with Iran to purchase oils bypassing the dollar, and this happened earlier this year. This is why we saw all that propaganda come out, and they're starting to do this again, because we have to remember they need to get this war started any way they can, and they really don't care who they get it started with, because they believe that they can move into different countries once this war gets started, and they believe they have the forces to win this battle. They have the forces to control the entire area and keep the dollar propped up. Their main objective is to really get into Syria and Iran, but if they have to, and the collapse is, they believe the collapse is going to happen, and it will happen, they will start the war to completely cover it up and blame it on another country, saying that they're the ones who caused it. Now, Britain's major banks are warning of cyber attack threat, and they're saying that their banks have many vulnerabilities because they are on an old complex IT system, and they are very worried now about cyber attacks, and they are creating a joint cyber reserve unit to help defend against cyber attacks to these banks. And the Federal Reserve and the U.S. banking regulators in June also formed a cybersecurity working group to coordinate the official response to a threat. And what they've also seen is that the U.S. intelligence officials have also warned of rising threat of cyber attacks to national and economic security. And during a Senate hearing, the U.S. is completely vulnerable to cyber espionage, cybercrime, and outright destruction of computer networks, both from sophisticated government-sponsored assaults and criminal hacker groups and cyber terrorism. So we can see what is happening here. They are getting ready, not just here in the U.S., but all over the world for some type of major cyber attack, because this is going to be their only way out of this. When the entire system collapses, they will not be able to keep the system going, so they will need some type of event and other country to blame the entire collapse on. Now, Netanyahu was giving a speech to the UN, and he was explaining that Iran is, just a month away, or they already have a nuclear weapon. They have all the uranium they need, and he's going on and on and on about how this is terrible, and this is the same argument they've been making for the last 25 years. They've been saying the same thing, that Iran is 3 to 5 years away from creating a weapon. And all this is doing is creating the propaganda for the next false flag event. And they're letting everyone know that they are close to creating a nuclear weapon. And if you notice, they're not 3 to 5 months away anymore. It's not even 3 months away now. They either have them or they're a month. They have all the uranium that they need, and they are continuing with this propaganda, because what they are building this up for is a huge false flag, and they need to get into Iran and into Syria. Iran is selling their oil, not using the U.S. dollar. Same with Syria. Iran is selling their oil to Russia. They are selling their oil to North Korea, and they're bypassing the U.S. dollar. And again, the central bankers do not like this whatsoever. And they've been doing and trying to get into Iran for the longest time now. And they understand that the U.S. dollar only has a certain time period. And if they do not do something within this time period, the U.S. dollar will implode and collapse. And what will happen then is that the U.S. government and the Fed will be blamed for letting this happen. And they understand that this cannot happen. They need to shift the blame onto another country. So what they're going to have to do right now, because they do understand that the American people, the Congress, do not want any type of war. And you can see with what I said yesterday with Susan Rice and John Kerry, they are manipulating the agreement to get Assad out. They are manipulating the entire thing so they have wiggle room. And we can see this happening. And if they can't get it with Syria, they'll get it with Iran. They don't care how they do it. We understand now. I see news now is breaking out, where I brought up yesterday about the the general who was relieved of his command from the nuclear arsenal because of his supposedly gambling problem. And he's no longer second in command of the nuclear arsenal. And there was the shift of nuclear weapons. And we also had Lindsey Graham come out on the same time period saying that Iran could use nuclear weapons in the harbor of Charleston or New York City. And we can see that this entire picture now is being painted so we understand what is going on. And we all understand that they need to continually push this forward. We understand that Al-Qaeda has made threats, and now we have Al-Shabaab, which is another terrorist organization that has links to Al-Qaeda. And what's funny is down in Yemen, Al-Qaeda is now holding militants hostage, and we really don't hear that many reports about what is happening in Yemen, because right now Yemen is already controlled by the U.S. government. We only hear of cases where the U.S. government is not controlling or they're trying to stop something, like in Kenya when Kenya was signing the deal with China to become the clearinghouse of the yuan. And this is why we see President Obama out there giving aid to all the Middle Eastern African nations that use children as soldiers, because the central bankers know we want those natural resources and we need to control them, and they need to become our puppet regimes. And this is how they're moving this forward. So what we can see right now is that things are completely taking shape. We have this ridiculous government shutdown where they're arguing, and I see already the Republicans might, remove the decision about defunding Obamacare, and eventually they'll come to an agreement, raise the debt ceiling, and the United States moves further into debt, which cannot be sustained by the revenues that are created by the people. So when this debt gets larger and larger and larger, and they have no more income, they have to continually to borrow. And if they continually to borrow, guess what happens? The closer we come to a collapse. And they understand this, and this is why they have all of these plans in motion. This is why we're seeing a lot of stuff happen in the months of October and November into December with drills, power grid drills, and the FEMA region getting prepared, this shake down for the earthquakes in FEMA region 3 and 4, and we are seeing this all fit into what is definitely coming. And again, I will say it again, this will not be a one-off false flag, because they need to get the American people completely involved. Just like 9/11, even though it was World Trade Center, there were planes headed in Pennsylvania. There were one that hit a Pentagon, and there were and people understood there were other planes around the country to make the entire country feel it. So they are going to do the same type of thing this time, so the entire country feels it. So there might be some type of chemical weapon set off in a city, a nuclear weapon set off in a city. We might see a cyber attack at the same exact time. All of this, in effect, creating the atmosphere that it's happening all over the country. And this was a planned out terrorist attack on the entire U.S. And when the people see this at this point, hopefully they realize that this was a false flag, and they still say, no, we're not going to war. That's the only way that we can actually beat them. But if the people are all sleeping and they do not see this, they will beg for war. Congress will get up and say, yes, we need to get these people, and we will be involved in the next war. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.